love to say I told you so. And I love to sing it.
Hello, I'm Alexandra here with Glasse Factory, and today we're speaking with Christopher. Could you do me a favor and describe your sound to an audience that's never heard one of your songs before?
Well, it's pop music. Some of the songs are very organic with live instruments, and some of the songs are a little bit more produced and has like an urban touch. But I think just it's classical pop music. A lot of the songs are up-tempo and optimistic and has this positive vibe, but differs a little bit.
Why do you sing in English over Danish?
It just came really natural for me to write in English. All I ever did was listen to English music. I never listened to a lot of Danish music, and I always had this very ambitious dream about someday, you know, when I made it in Denmark, conquer other territories and go international. And you know, that is totally a long shot for a 15-year-old kid to think like that, but that was one of the reasons why I started writing in English. I just thought, you know, I'm just gonna conquer the world someday, and I can't do that in Danish, you know.
Yeah, so then what's helped you conquer the world and reach fans outside of Denmark with your music being in English? Because I feel like coming from Denmark, it's still such a small country, so then you still have to get others who understand English to hear your music. So how have you been able to overcome that challenge?
I don't really know how to answer that question. Like, I don't know like what happened. Like the first thing that happened was I got a call from my manager, and he was like, yo, this song Copenhagen Girls I had at the time, it's #1 on QQ Music in China. That was like the first international thing. And I was like, that's awesome, what is QQ Music? You know, it's this streaming service in China, and we had to of course go over there and check it out and see what it was all about. And that's when the whole Asia and especially the Chinese adventure started for me. And just keep coming back and keep doing interviews and promo and playing shows just grew bigger and bigger. And then when you break such a big market as China, you can go to Thailand, you can go to Korea, you can go to the Philippines, Malaysia, all the neighboring countries in that area, in that region. And that's how it started. And then last year, I guess, that was when Germany started playing some of my songs on the radio, especially Irony from this new album. And you know, it was definitely one step at a time, and it took time, but you gotta let the music, you know, clear the way for you in some way. You can of course do the thing where you play every city and conquer like 100 or 50 people at a time, but for me it was always like, let the music grow organically, let's see where it spreads and where the music can just do the talking, and then we'll go to those places. I was never a big fan of, you know, stuffing my music down people's throats. If they want to listen to 21 Savage, as I feel like they want to do right now, especially in the States, I'm not gonna be like, hey, what about this chorus? Da 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 da. You know, some sweet pop music. There's just some markets where you find that connection between the audience and your music, and I just feel like I did that in Asia and in Germany, and also I'm just gonna focus on that, I guess.
That's super.
Yeah. But of course it takes a village, and I have a huge team behind me and a manager constantly kicking down doors, and Warner Music has been the best at trying to push my songs and doing interviews and making me do some promo and the right TV shows, and that is obviously a key thing. And I could have never ever done any of this by myself. You need those people behind you to push you.
Of course, they're your team, your family on your journey for this.
Yeah.
How would you compare working in the Danish music industry to the American music industry?
There's definitely a different work ethic in Scandinavia. I would say both in Norway and in Sweden and Denmark, where I've spent tons of hours writing. Where in LA it's a little bit more like, you know, should we say session starts at 12 tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they come in at 4. It's like, oh, I'm starving, bro. It's like, okay, let's get some lunch and write a song in 2 hours. They're a little bit, they have a completely different mentality. It's like you can't force the creative sort of energy, and you can't force inspiration, so you just gotta chill, man. You just gotta chill and let's talk and let's, you know, and I love that. As a variation, I couldn't do that all the time, you know, and I feel the the panic and the impatience and the anxiety rising in my body every time. It's like, it's been 4 hours and we have nothing. And yeah, we've been talking and eating lunch and it's a chill time, but let's get to work. You know, I got that sort of, I'm here to work, so let's do it. Let's go in a session. And I think especially people from Stockholm and Scandinavia, they're machines. You know, it's like, okay, what do you think about this? Okay, I'm just gonna fix it. I've met some Americans that are like that, but we think that. I mean, if you put me in a room with some good songwriters for 4 hours and you like write a song within the next 4 hours, I could totally do that. And the American approach is more like, we're gonna write the song when the song comes to us. We're gonna let it happen. Yeah. So that's a big difference. But I love both. Like, and every process is super different. Yeah.
How does your experience with your fans in Denmark vary compared to other areas of the world? Do you feel like you get a different treatment when you come home to Denmark versus when you're in a different area of the world? Or would you find it pretty similar?
I would say it's pretty similar. I mean, especially in Asia, they can get a little crazy. And the dedication and the way they're so loyal is like, once a fan, always a fan. That's the Asian fan mentality. And when we go out there, you know, just playing shows, it's like small things, but when I'm on stage and a song is done, it's like, and it's dead silence. You know, everybody's just listening. No phones, no cameras, no nothing. They're just listening. And I'm like, once upon a time, you know, you really got it, and you really got everyone's attention. Where here it's just like, the song is done, it's like, you know,
Another drink.
yeah, you know, it's a little bit more loose. But I feel like every time I go to Beijing or Shanghai, or I arrive at some airport, there will be 300 fans waiting with, you know, gifts and yeah, you know, just signs and letters and stuffed animals and food and like these crazy presents, you know. And that sort of way of putting your idol or the person you're a fan of on this pedestal, it's like a god thing, you know.
Yeah.
And it's super weird, but it's so much fun as well. But it's super different from the Danish mentality. I think they're a fan in a little bit more chill way.
Yeah. How have you been able to mature your sound throughout the years? Because you became a fad when you were a teen, more or less. So then how have you been able to translate that into a mature career?
I think it just happened very naturally. It happened just step by step and sort of on its own and by itself. I think, you know, when you're 17, I was 17, 18 when I wrote the first album. Obviously, that's gonna sound a little bit sweeter and a little bit more young and naive and bubblegum pop, whatever. And you're so influenced by all the people around you and what they say and their opinions, and so you morph into this person trying to be like 5 different artists.
Yeah.
And I had no experience. I was so green. And then you get into it and you start like, okay, this is what I really like. This is what really feels like me. And I got a little bit closer to that on Told You So. And then I got my first, you know, big hit song in Denmark with Told You So. And something happens when you get a big song. It was like an up-tempo, funky song. So it turned a little bit away from being the mellow singer-songwriter that I felt like I really was. Growing up listening to Jack Johnson and Jason Mraz, and especially John Mayer was one of my big musical influences and inspirations. Now it was this up-tempo, happy funk guy, you know, hey, this sexy lady, you know. So the next album was very like, okay, so this works, so let's do that, you know. Maybe that's who I am. And then I realized during that process that I can't just make an album, you know, from the standpoint of like, okay, this works, let's try to do that. I need to sort of constantly develop and just do what feels natural and what comes easy. So that's what I really felt like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do in the next process of writing the next album. And that's what I did on Under the Surface. I just did exactly what I wanted to, and I just went with the vibe and the flow. Can you describe what life on tour is like, simply? That's heaven. Yeah? It's heaven for me. That's why I do this. Yeah? I love touring. I love performing live. and this whole creative process that we're talking about now, it's such a roller coaster ride. You know, one day you leave the studio and you're like, I'm a genius, you know,
Yeah.
and the next day you're like, I'm shit. This album is gonna be shit. I'm not good at anything. You know, it's so hard mentally, and you have to give so much of yourself, and you're constantly out of your comfort zone, and it's just a weird mental ride, and that. It will always be, for me, at least. I think many artists can say yes to that. But being on tour, for me, is I'm just enjoying every minute. I'm enjoying the time on the bus, hanging out with the guys, sleeping, not focusing on anything else but, you know, what's in front of you, the gig that night. And I just love being on that stage. That rush and that adrenaline sort of rush that you get on stage, and hearing the people sing the words that you just came up with in the studio, and seeing their smiling faces, and being a part of, you know, that's one of, to me, the biggest privilege of being a musician is to be a part of the soundtrack to people's lives, you know. And that's the biggest compliment I can get as a musician. Like, that night, that show changed my life, or I listen to your songs when I feel down, or you really helped me through this tough period of my life. Or that is, to me, that is what John Mayer was for me, or Michael Jackson was for me. And if I can be that to someone, that's perfect.
That's special.
That's special, and
That's
I really
super
feel
special.
that live. So I just absolutely love that.
Heard a lot about Janteloven.
Janteloven.
So, would you be able to describe that for Americans? Do you think it affects you as an artist? Has it been able to help you stay humble?
Definitely.
Yeah?
I think there's good and bad sides to Janteloven. It's basically a way of thinking. It's all the there's all the times that people tell you, just because you're rich, just because you're talented, just because you're good at something, doesn't mean you can act a certain way. It doesn't mean that you are somebody. Who do you think you are? It's that sort of, it has a negative ring to it, definitely. It is like, who do you think you are? Janteloven, get down from that high horse and keep your feet like on the ground, you know? And there's something about it that is so wrong to me. And you would never hear a Danish person say like, I'm so good, or like, I'm so rich, I'm so great at singing, like, you should hear me, like, I'm so good. And you could totally hear Americans say that. But it is, there's levels to it, I would say. Just growing up and knowing that I can't say these certain things, that definitely helped me stay grounded and stay humble. Because when I was 18 and the girls were screaming, and I had this record deal, and I made a lot of money, and it would have been easy for me to just go with it, you know, and act crazy and be a complete douche, because I am somebody. What are you talking about? You know? But I just, it's just such a big part of me and who I am. Just to don't think you are somebody. It's like it can quickly change, you know. And I think it's healthy to have that voice in the back of your head, because the next thing after thinking don't think you are somebody is like, be grateful for what you have. And I think that's probably the most important thing about Janteloven, because it helps me really appreciate what I have right now, because I know that it can change very quickly. And looking back and looking at all the things that you've accomplished, and be proud, you know, and take a moment to just enjoy what you have, instead of constantly pursuing the next thing, or like bigger, better, you know. You can really get stuck in that. Struggled a lot with that as well. Always wanting more, you know.
Is there anything about your Danish upbringing that you think has really uniquely shaped you as an artist to stick out to other international artists?
I think Janteloven is one of the things. That's a big part of being Danish, and being humble, being grounded, treat everybody like you want to be treated, and it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or the, you know, the cleaner. I'll talk to both persons the same way and be at eye level, you know. And I think that's just that's a Danish thing. Of course, there are exceptions, but yeah.
That's super. Thank you for your
Thank
time
you so
today.
much.
It was great speaking with